for people who are in the lipedema community who don't know Deanna is just a wealth of knowledge about fascia. I have never heard anyone else who has as many hours. I think last I heard from her, it was like over 60,000 hours of hands in fascia. Her hands have knowledge, y'all. And it's all translated into helping so many people. She freely shares all of the knowledge that she has, so many things on YouTube, on the Facebook group that she has. And everything she has said just resonated with me as someone who had chronic conditions, a lot of pain, knew it had something to do with connective tissue, but couldn't figure out all those connections. And so all those hours Deanna had as a athletic therapist, a yoga instructor, all that training, it just all culminated in this amazing program that she has. Fluid isometrics and then block therapy, where she figured out a way that you can use her knowledge in your own home with the tools that she's developed. And so I'm a big fangirl, and Deanna has a different approach to lipedema that you probably haven't heard. It's not coming from a medical model. It's coming from her years and years and years of understanding fascia and hands-on listening and talking to people who have all these weird conditions that we have.
Thank you so much for inviting me to your amazing group. And I really do have such a passion for sharing this system with the masses, because if we really understand what's truly going on in our body and then have an approach, all of the confusion around this container that we've been given can be pushed aside, and we then have this understanding. Because first of all, the medical community as well, I mean, it's kind of like the legal community. Like they create a language that's really, unless you're a doctor, unless you're a lawyer, like it's foreign words, right? Like I like to keep things really simple because everybody should understand what's going on in the body. And when we're talking about the fascia, think of like okay, first of all, I'm gonna give you like a little analogy here. I love sharing analogy because when we're teaching something that's hard to see, when we can understand how it works in nature, then we have a very simple playbook to go on. So I live in Winnipeg in Canada, and it can be minus 40 Celsius in the winter. Now, in my space, I can have the most expensive, best everything in the world to keep me healthy. But if my window breaks and I can't fix it, I'm going to freeze to death and die. So your cell membrane is the container of everything that goes on inside the cell. And the medical community doesn't look at the cell membrane as being relevant. They're looking at all of the interactions inside the cell. And the thing is, as long as the cell membrane is intact and supported properly, the body takes care of itself if we just do a few simple things that we need to do to keep our body healthy. So think of, you've got trillions of cells in the body. So the cell membrane of every cell is literally connected to every other cell through the fascia system. So all cells communicate to one another through the fascia. There's two primary proteins in this fascia system. There's many components, but two primary proteins. And I just want to share this one thing and then I'll pass it over to Kelly. This is important to understand because we hear a lot about collagen. So one of the primary proteins is collagen, and it's the structural protein that keeps us from becoming a puddle. Elastin allows us to have freedom of movement and flexibility. When they're balanced, we have a container that supports cell alignment so that every cell has optimal space in and around the cell. Ease of absorption of nutrients, ease of removal of toxins and debris. But we are under this constant influence of gravity plus trauma from our past. And I mean, when I say trauma, I don't mean just catastrophic events where you might have had a car accident or witnessed something horrendous. Listening to the news can be traumatic. Being born is a trauma. Our belly button is our first scar. And then all of the little things, the little hits, like the bullies, the injuries, the onslaughts of stress and tension, What this does is it causes us to reactively hold the breath. And when we hold the breath without releasing that negative trauma in the moment, like a deer who survives an attack and shakes, we end up aging from a contracted perspective. And then the body has to pattern in order to keep you upright. And it's those collagen proteins that migrate to areas of need to stop us from tipping over, like scaffolding in the body or scaffolding on a building. It acts the same way. Over time, as this continues and continues and continues, we become denser and denser and denser. And we don't compress linearly. Energy moves in waves and spirals. So we're literally spiraling down toward the earth, constantly adapting and compensating in our body unconsciously in order to keep you upright. And because again, energy moves in waves and spirals, the way those collagen proteins will migrate to areas of need does so in spiral patterns. And then they will grip to bone with a force of up to 2,000 pounds per square inch. That grip is a magnetic grip, but that's what you're seeing with lipedema. It's these grips of tension in the lower body because we've lost our balance. The body's compensating. So what this work is all about is getting to those grips at the bone to create a release so that we can support blood and oxygen flow into cells and bring the body back to balance. So I just wanted to give you that as a little bit of a base understanding.
Thank you for being here and just for all I've learned. Truly learning about fascia and being able to address it in my own way, in my own time, at my own pace, it has been life-changing. I had a lot of craziness happen in my body after my daughter was born. She was my fourth child. So it wasn't just pregnancy or just breastfeeding or just whatever. It was, I guess, a culmination of all the things. As Deanna said, a trauma after a trauma. And being pregnant is joyful and it's a gift and it's all these things, but it does a lot to your body. It demands a lot of your body. And so when she's speaking about trauma, you know, nursing 4 kids for years of my life, my body feels like that's a trauma. Giving birth 4 times, my body feels like that's a trauma because your body doesn't really care if it's a happy trauma or like a devastating trauma. Your body just feels the stress of it and the demand on it. And so it was after she was born that a lot of things just exploded. And one of those things was lipedema. And I didn't have a label for it. I just knew that I went from normal weight to 50 pounds gained in about 3 months. And with that came all the things that we all experience, the pain, food sensitivities. I had migraines again that I hadn't had for a while, just all those things, heaviness in the tissues, pain with pressure. I mean, the list is very long. And so when I say I understand the lipedema symptoms and how devastating it can be for your life, I really do. Because by the time my daughter was about 3, I was in bed almost all the time because I just couldn't function. And I also had 3 teenage boys and I was a homeschool mom. And so to be able to do what I needed for my kids, everything else had to go. One day my daughter leaned against my arm when she wanted to read a book with me, and it hurt so much that I realized she's going to grow up with me like this. If I don't change something, this is going to be her life, living with me in this bed with these 4 walls, and that's going to be it. And so I really started searching and searching and searching. And to make a really long story short, as I was watching a pain summit, I saw Deanna's presentation. And I knew about fascia. I had looked into fascia. I knew there was something about fascia. Lipedema is a connective tissue disorder, and that's just another name for the fascia. And so everything Deanna said made sense. And it took me a long journey. There was a lot of fear because when you're in pain, you don't want to do something that causes pain. And with lipedema, there's a lot of pain with pressure. And so it was a gentle journey. And that's one of the things I really love is that block therapy can be a gentle journey. It can be a journey at your own pace. And So I started not with a piece of wood, I started with a towel. For a lot of months, I started with a towel, and there were still small little things that happened along the way that were significant. Just you don't realize how significant the small things are until one day you wake up and you realize something has shifted. And one of the first things that shifted for me was I could take a breath, a full breath, inhale, full breath, exhale, without it feeling like everything was like hitching up my chest as I took the breath, and I could completely exhale. And it was such an odd sensation to me. The full breath without feeling like everything was getting stuck as I took a breath. Um, One of the other significant things after a few months of just using the towel was I could get out of bed in the morning and not think about whether it was going to be too painful for me to walk or I would have to get back in bed. And that's a huge thing for a mom with 4 kids. It just, I can't explain like the significance of how much it's changed everything, from even breathing and getting out of bed to regaining all this other stuff that I've regained.